How you doing? Happy Friday. IB Nation Sports Talk up and running. Vince DeDario, Jesse Stires, Sean Stires. Hope you're having a great one. I don't know how you could be having a great one.
I'm having a great one.
You're having a great one, and you were up all night, Vince. What time did you get to bed last night?
4:30. Officially.
4:30, baby.
Yeah, 4:30. So I was, so obviously a little peek behind the curtain, right? So show ends at 3:30. I got to download it. I got to put it up, podcast style. So I got it cut up into 4 shows. Got the first 3 up and running, ready, scheduled to go. And the 4th one is like processing. I fell asleep. Totally fell.
I bet you did.
Fell asleep during the 4th one.
Those things can take forever, man. It's just like, come on.
Right.
Come on. Who else is on the internet at 4:30 in the morning?
I fell asleep. And I fell asleep on like the most uncomfortable couch on the planet, but I was so tired it didn't matter. And then I woke up an hour later. I was like, oh, it's done. And so then I schedule it to go, and then I went up to the bedroom. But yeah, so I guess technically I went to bed at 4:30 on the couch. But you know what? It was worth every second of it.
I didn't stay up. I was like waiting for the transcripts, to get uploaded by the Orange Bowl site, and it never. I'm like, all right. I was watching Scott Van Pelt Sports Center till around 1:30 or something like that after I had written, like my main. Game recap and all that stuff, and then went to bed. Rolled into the living room at around 6:40ish, I think it was. My wife's like, "What are you doing up?"
Yeah, seriously. What were you doing up?
There are things to do.
Man.
Jesse,
I fell asleep listening to Vince last night. Actually,
putting people to sleep.
Good post game show. Good post game show. I listened to a little bit last night. Listened to a good deal of it, more than half, I think, this morning. Didn't get to all the super chats and mailbag and all that stuff.
I was seeing $100 super chats in there.
Dude, we got a $500 super chat.
Nice.
So I haven't checked the analytics today, but I'm guessing it's going to be pretty good. And
that'll pay for that van we were just talking about to go to Atlanta, right?
I'm just saying there was 87 super chats at one point or another, and I think a couple more got added in as we were dialing it down. So we kind of rolled through the super chats. You didn't really miss a whole lot if you didn't listen to the super chat one, because we had so many. And it was 2:30 in the morning at that point. So it was like, we need to roll through these a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Anthony, starting today off. Maybe we should just say we'll only address questions if they're in the form of a super chat.
I mean, we're trying to get down to Atlanta, obviously, and so we got to put some stuff into the till here to make sure that we can get down there in one piece. So and no guarantee on tickets for everybody. So we're gonna need some coin.
That's right. Sean Kelly wants to know what IB members are going to Atlanta. So I'll be I don't know if you're talking about us or members, but
oh yeah,
Vince and Brian and I are as long as we get approved for credentials, we're rolling down, and then Jesse may go and Dylan may go, so we may have a whole boatload.
This is going to be a memorable trip. Let's just put it that way.
Tickets 1,900 and up right now. USMA 87 says maybe who knows? Maybe it'll be like the Notre Dame Indiana game. Maybe it'll come down closer to game time.
What I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Hang around. Jesse can sell his body on the streets outside the Mercedes-Benz Dome.
Plasma.
Sell some plasma.
Yeah, that's right.
Or other. Who knows? Who knows what you could sell down there?
Some little children might be running around.
He's just offering you up, man.
One of us needs to get a photographer's pass.
I mentioned that today, but Angela, the professional, is going. So you're out on that. Jesse got to be a photographer at the College World Series a couple of years ago. You might remember. He did it at the
Pinstripe Bowl
a few years back as well.
Ah, okay.
Well, a good birthday present for Marcus Freeman. Happy 39th to him, and of course, happy 13th to his daughter Sienna as well.
That's right.
I didn't realize shared the same birthday with him until after the game last night.
Well, when you have 6 kids, the odds are they're up there for sharing a birthday.
That's true.
That's got to be his favorite child, right? If you have the same birthday as dad,
you would think so.
Jesse, and it's not allowed to have favorites.
Oh, hey, whoa! We all know, like Deion Sanders said, there's a list. There's a list.
It's in here though. It's never written down.
You never say it out loud.
That's right.
You never say it out loud, but it's there. So
that's right. It's always in here.
That's right.
Well, varies.
We're going to get into this game. Oh, horrible. Thank you very much.
Randy.
Just a super sticker. You talk about a super sticker with that one. Thank you.
Holy smokes.
Thank you very kindly, my friend.
Add them up. Here we go. Let's go.
That's right. Start them off.
This is the IB bus fun.
Start them off right now. Joe, appreciate you, my friend, as well. He said, go Irish, one more to go with a heavyweight fight. I really thought the injuries last night would be the straw that broke the camel's back, but they weren't. Is there an injury that would break the camel's back?
They might have to start going to preferred walk-ons at some point.
They might. They might.
I keep saying this to a lot of people today. Charles Jagasaw stepping in at right guard after tearing his pec in the preseason camp and coming out in the second half and playing
and dominating.
I mean, it wasn't perfect, but he did more than enough and got the job. It's just remarkable, and it all goes back to your head coach. And another thing I've said today is we just got to thank the man who ran out in the middle of the night, because without that, this program wouldn't be in the same spot. We wouldn't be sitting here today.
You're not wrong.
A BK-led team loses that game 31-6 yesterday.
I was not going to mention him today.
But it's the best thing that's happened to this program in the last 30 years.
Yep.
So you got it. I have to thank him at the end of the day.
I have to praise you, BK. I have to praise you like I do. That's right. Hey, how about some praise for Mr. Herb Street? Listen to this.
See the same kind of game. What's the over-under? What'd you say it is?
46.
46. I see like a 24-20 kind of game.
Low scoring game.
24-20. And because of the turnovers, I think the difference in this game will be a critical turnover late in this game. Notre Dame will get it. And like they've done all year, that will be the difference. They'll turn that into points. I'm going Notre Dame.
Wow.
Yay, says the prophet Herb Street. Yes, Desmond Howard, who picked Penn State. Pat McAfee just keeps picking against Notre Dame as well.
He wanted to pick Notre Dame. He just did it for...
Is he doing the I've already picked against him, so I'm going to keep picking against him thing?
Basically, I think he's looking at it as like a good omen for Notre Dame. Notre Dame fans told him to pick Penn State because he keeps picking the other team and Notre Dame keeps winning. So he's like, you know what? Right. I'll just pick the other team.
All right.
Whatever. The other guys all picked Notre Dame. The rest of them picked Notre Dame. So Saban picked Notre Dame. Corso picked Notre Dame. Herb Street picked Notre Dame.
Well, Corso loves dressing up in the leprechaun outfit.
I know.
So.
Stanford Steve picked Notre Dame, and he's like 37-19 on the season. That's pretty good stuff.
Not bad.
When do we start? This is probably an off-season topic, but when do we get to start talking about the fact that they need to retire Lee Corso?
Oh, that was a yesterday discussion.
Yeah, let's leave that for. Let's do that. I don't want to dig into that right now.
That was rough. It was rough.
You almost fell over.
So we've watched a lot of Notre Dame football games in our time.
So smooth.
All three of us were at the Bush Push game, which has been almost 20 years ago at this point, which seems freaking amazing. Was last night's Orange Bowl win over Penn State the best Notre Dame football game you've ever seen?
You got a smaller catalog, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah. What was it the best game ever? I don't think so, but it was the best win ever.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, to win and go on to the national. I mean, listen, Notre Dame played very sloppy in the first half, and they kind of got. I mean, Riley Leonard threw a bad interception late in that game that really could have broke them as well. But overall, I think that there was a lot of stuff that could have been better, but they still found a way to win, and that's really all I care about. Like, I don't care about how ugly or how great it was. But overall win, it has to be this is the best win ever because they're going on to the national championship. And they're going to a national championship where I feel that there's a legitimate shot that they can win it all. This is the best team that Notre Dame has had since I've been alive. I didn't think they played their perfect game last night, but they won. So that's all I care about.
Stephen B says, I don't like exciting games.
No, I get a
I prefer to UGA, zero stress. I don't know, man.
I thought the Georgia game was better than the Penn State game. Like Notre Dame played better, but I thought.
Well, yeah, I'm not
better.
talking about a clean game from start to finish. Like this was because, like, I thought they had it lost at least 3 times. You know, like one, I wasn't sure and I was gonna save this for its own question, but I really do feel like they came out and maybe we underestimated the impact of Penn State having a couple more days. I definitely underestimated. Look, give Penn State credit because, like, I knew their defensive line was going to be good. Their offensive line was moving some guys, obviously, in the first half. They impressed me with their physicality. Like we had heaped all this praise on Notre Dame. Penn State impressed the hell out of me with their physicality, especially in the first half. And I mean, obviously a couple drives in the second half as well. Like, they obviously weren't just going to roll over, but neither was Notre Dame. They found their second wind after it looked like they, just got gut punched there in the first half and really just, pushed around in the first half on both sides of the ball quite a bit. But, and then like when, Notre Dame goes up 24-17, it's like, okay, seem like all the momentum is riding in Irish favor, after Jaden Greathouse with a 54-yard touchdown catch. But, momentum goes back the other way. And it was like, what's going to happen in this thing? I had no clue. And that's part of what made it so.
And anybody
that's what made it so exciting. It might have been nerve-wracking, but it was pretty exciting.
Look, this is the best game that I've seen as a Notre Dame fan in my lifetime because I didn't watch the 1988 games. I was 7 years old. So all of that doesn't count. And so it's 93 and on for me. And yeah, the Florida State Notre Dame game was great in 93, but this game meant more. And so it was a better game. I'm sorry. There was a lot of hype obviously surrounding the Notre Dame Florida State game in 93. It was a regular season game. It was a regular season game. So yeah, it was a great game. Don't get me wrong. This is a playoff game with a chance to go to the national championship. And last time I checked, Notre Dame blew it the next week. So, it was a big game, sure. They didn't handle it very well. Jury's still out on what's going to happen next week. But this is a bigger game because of the stage that it was on and because of the magnitude of the game itself. Yeah. It's a bigger game.
I mean, you could definitely get swept up in, Mike Greenberg, hyperbole, and all that kind of stuff. But look, there were 3 lead changes in the fourth quarter where 31 total points were scored in the fourth quarter after there were 20 total points scored in the first 3 quarters. 31 was scored in the fourth quarter. And this is crazy. It was the only game this century that included 5 game-tying or go-ahead scores in the game, multiple interceptions, a touchdown pass of 50-plus yards, and a game-winning field goal in the last 10 seconds of the game. All those things happened in the fourth quarter. That's according to Opta stats. There have been more than 25,000 combined NFL and FBS games played this century. It's the first time all those things happened in the same game, and they happened in the fourth quarter alone. So, if you're watching a football movie and all that stuff happened, you wouldn't think it was even realistic. It's like, okay, cue to Marcus Freeman giving the halftime speech, and it's like Ram Jam Black Betty starts playing, and here comes the montage, and it's the injured running back who said he wasn't going to hurdle defenders jumps over a guy who's practically standing up, and then he also drags an All-American and 2 other defenders into the end zone. It's like, oh, well, that seems like kind of a stretch. I don't know if that's going to happen, Booby Miles or whatever, like the guy's hurt. And then it's like the wholesome, everyone's All-American, throws a boneheaded interception, but then he bounces back and he throws a 54-yard touchdown pass to a receiver who gets more receptions in one game than he's had in the last 5 games combined. It's like, okay. And then not to mention a kicker who couldn't kick a ball into the ocean a month ago, and the cornerback who USC is picking on a little more than a month ago with the, dives, makes the game-saving interception. And then, on top of all that, you've got third-string offensive lineman and the backup quarterback coming in and saving the day. So again, it's like if you're watching that in a movie, does any of that seem realistic? Doesn't seem like it, but it all happened. Almost all of it in the fourth quarter alone. And, so Was it, does it top Florida State 93? Does it top Miami in 88? In terms of, maybe impact, significance, maybe not, but like in terms of like exciting football and, just edge of your seat stuff that all happened in one game, I can't remember a much better game in recent memory.
Well, and the fact that we're comparing it to games that occurred in the last century and we're 25 years into this century pretty much says all that you need to know about where Notre Dame has been in games like this over the last 30 plus years, right? Because I don't think anybody mentioned a game post 1993 in the chat since we asked this question. So I was 12 at that point, right? I have 4 children that are older than that right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's how long it's been. We have to go all the way back to then to even come up with a game that might compete with this game. Like, come on, man. Like, this is huge for Notre Dame right now.
No, absolutely. It absolutely is. Jesse, did you have anything to add on top of that?
I don't think so. I'm more interested to kind of get into the next bullet point because I want to get into like the in-game tactics and how things like shifted a bit throughout the game.
Okay. All right. Well, I do want to talk about this real quick. The day before the Notre Dame Penn State game, you might remember Nittany Lions head coach James Franklin had a lot to say. He asked Marcus Freeman how old he was, talked about how great Freeman's hairline was, and of course, he also said this.
I think it should be consistent across college football. I think, again, this is no knock at Coach or Notre Dame, but I think everybody should be in a conference. I think everybody should play a conference championship game, or no one should play a conference championship game. I think everybody should play the same number of conference games. I just think things need to be consistent across college football. I think there's just a ton of things that need to be discussed.
So, that's the gist of, like what grabbed the headlines. James Franklin, they need to be in a conference. And we talked about it the other day and, it was talked about quite a bit. Well, Xavier Watts said after the game last night, Freeman was ticked off about the press conference. Like, he came back, that team had a meeting, and Marcus Freeman was ticked off. He was fired up. And what Watts said was that Freeman's anger transferred onto the field for the Irish. Now, maybe it didn't show up, again, as much in the first half, but there was a lot more fire in the second half. But, I guess if nothing else, good old James Franklin gets the foot and mouth award for firing up the beast last night, Vince.
Well, it was such a pandering, like, I've been here before, you're such a child, and I've followed your career. And I mean, it like
good job, little boy.
Yeah. The whole thing. And look, we've talked about this in the past about how Marcus Freeman is almost like too honest sometimes in press conferences and things like that. And he's gotten better about that. There was no question about what was going on in his mind while listening to James Franklin speak.
Oh, man, it would have killed, like, if you could have, like, real-time thought bubbles coming out of Marcus Freeman's head. He's like, because, like, he wouldn't change his expression either, but you knew what was going on. You knew what was going on, man.
Oh, my goodness. Like that. Oh, my. And so you knew he was pissed off, right? I didn't know if it was actually going to do anything towards the game or whatever. But it's like, you felt like if Marcus Freeman had an opportunity to run up the score, which obviously he didn't, he probably would, you know what I mean? Like, he was visibly upset about that entire exchange, rightfully so, because of the manner in which James Franklin was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that James Franklin did that as kind of a mental tactic and to try to get Marcus Freeman off playing a little bit because of, I think not that he was scared, but I think he kind of understood that his team might be a little outmatched in this game. And so I think he was maybe starting to play a little bit of mental, warfare tactics, trying to get under his skin there a little bit. But I just don't see it working. And like you, Vince, I just didn't appreciate the, it's like James Franklin was the mentor and he was like, oh, you've come such a long way, but now I have to beat you or something like that is the vibe it was giving me. But again, I thought it was all kind of mental tactics, but at the end of the day, it's just egg on Franklin's face because all it did was fire him up a little bit more. And that's, it's just in this game, a little bit more was all that was needed, to win at the end of the day. So everything that James Franklin and all the outside noise did to give more encouragement and push Notre Dame even more, it's almost like thank you, because without it, it's like would have Notre Dame, pushed forward and finished that game off. We don't know. They still won at the end of the day, but it's just so egg on his face. And I saw something last night that said, James Franklin went through 16 games and is still in the same spot that he was at the beginning of the season. It's like he hasn't done anything. He's still in the same spot. Marcus Freeman is already ahead of James Franklin in terms of a head coach and winning more significant, impactful games. So, he might be little brother, but little brother's, beating big brother's butt right now.
I just feel like if you walked into a community center in Puxatawny, like in March, and James Franklin and Pat Narduzzi are sitting there, and they've got like their little styrofoam cups of coffee and hot cocoa, and they're leading the He-Man Notre Dame Haters Club. It's like
I just there's something
talk about head in a blender. Like
there's just something about James Franklin that is not
likable.
Yeah. And the fact, like,
it's uncanny. It's uncanny the similarities between James Franklin and Brian Kelly, quite frankly.
That's fair. That's fair.
Two really good programs, but ultimately there's a cap.
Yeah.
There's a cap on both of them.
Yeah. And it's again, he's just disingenuous, I guess is a good word for me, because, I actually watched that press conference, and we all knew that the whole, the first African-American to be the head coach in a national championship game, like that was a topic of conversation. He came with a packet of notes. Did you notice this? That had everything written down about the history of African-Americans in football. And when he was asked the question, he's
referencing his stuff so he makes sure he hits his bullet points.
Yeah, it felt very disingenuous. It felt like he was handed this piece of paper and be like, hey, man, don't forget to mention all of this when they ask you this question. You know what I mean? Like, if you go back and watch, he had stuff highlighted on the paper, and he's going off and he's saying people's names, that Tony Dungy and like all these different guys, and he's reading them off of a piece of paper. Like, if you had that in your head and you're just talking about it and these guys inspired you and all that, cool. I think that's awesome. But to just go down and read it off of a piece of paper, it feels very disingenuous.
I mean, it's obvious, like listening and watching that press conference, James Franklin went in with a very specific agenda. And, like Jesse was talking about, like he wanted to try to get inside Freeman's head a little bit with some of that stuff. It was almost like a boxing, like gamesmanship when they do those press conferences.
It's like the weigh-in before the fight.
Yeah, exactly. You got
he was trying to sound more knowledgeable about the whole African-American thing, and he just, and again, talking down to Marcus Freeman, like, oh, your hairline, like it would. Yeah, I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I had no dog in the fight, so I didn't. There's nothing I could do about it.
So Jesse, you're on more of a time limit than us, and your time's going to be up. So you said you wanted to get into something specific before your time expires and you melt into the Cleveland night over there. So what is it?
I've got an extension to about 5:45. But
okay. So can I go in order with what we were going to talk about, or like where do you feel like we need to be right now?
I don't know. I kind of want to get that stuff in so we don't like lose track of time. And then,
so which stuff is it? Which stuff is it that you want to talk about then?
Just like the end game, like how Notre Dame came out versus the second half, that sort of stuff. And then we can get like back into the regularly scripted.
Well, there's nothing on script. I mean, we have like things that we're going to talk about, but go ahead. Like go ahead. You know what you want to talk about, so we'll flow off that.
So you kind of asked at the beginning of the show about the extra 2 days off, and was that a bigger factor?
Okay.
And so I wanted to play off of that just a little bit. It definitely looked like Penn State at the beginning of the game was a bit more fresh, and you talked about how they were coming off their blocks, and they were moving Notre Dame, and I hadn't seen Notre Dame kind of get moved like that in a while. And then the more I kind of sat back and looked at it, I really felt like Penn State had a good game plan for that first half and broke a lot of their own tendencies in the first half of kind of showing motion one way and going back the other way. And we know against Al Golden, he's going to be a very sound defense. And so you had to know something was going to be coming. And so in that first half, I felt like Penn State did a really good job about breaking tendencies, especially
they did,
on those outside zone runs. They were securing the edge a lot, and that was helping them. I mean, they were getting 5-6, yards a carry just about every time. And I think another thing that was really hard on the Notre Dame defense was how fast Penn State was coming out of the huddle, and they couldn't ID where 44 was. They couldn't ID where Singleton was, and sometimes 44 would line up at quarterback, and then quickly he would motion, and then the defense is going off of that, and a team that plays so much man coverage, they have to match quickly. And so when Penn State's coming out of the huddle quickly, and then they're audibling quickly, I felt like Penn State, did a really good job there in the first half of doing those things well, going against tendencies, getting out of the huddle quickly, and not allowing Notre Dame to really adjust. And then the second half, I mean, it was just a completely different story. And the main thing I saw offense out of Notre Dame, they started 3 straight runs in the second half with double pullers at Abdul Carter. They were no longer trying to run away from him because he was running everything down the line. And even on quarterback draws, he would sit there, wait for Leonard, and kind of fold in and make a tackle. And finally, Mike Denbrock just said, screw it. We're going to do what we do best and run double pullers, and we're going to run, pull side to Carter. So they run 3, double pulls in a row. They hit Aeneas Williams on the big play, and then they come back to another double puller to the field side, and Aeneas Williams gets a big gain down the 5-yard line. So, I thought the defense made a really good second half adjustment of, figuring out kind of those tendencies that Penn State was breaking. And then the Notre Dame offense came out and had a completely different game plan. And I think the whole season, the whole second half, the whole game can be summed up by that Jeremiah Love run. I think it's the most beautiful 2-yard run I've ever seen. I mean, just the guy to have that amount of sheer determination on one leg to carry 5 defenders for 2 yards. It was just incredible.
He was hit 2 yards from the line of scrimmage. He was hit 2 yards deep in the backfield, like almost as soon as he took the handoff, and he was breaking tackles. That was amazing.
I mean, you could literally see by the time
we talk about the 98-yard run, but that was like
he didn't get touched on that.
He earned
that was just straight speed.
Yeah, he earned every inch of that.
He literally had 2 guys on his back and was trying not to put weight on the bad knee. He was carrying 2 defenders.
Look, and he doesn't
on one leg.
We saw the Sun Bowl last year. He doesn't do that in the Sun Bowl last year. But, like what have we talked about, Jesse, the Lauren Lando effect and where this team is from a strength and a physical standpoint. And, credit Jeremiah Love for putting in the work, one, and the determination and the heart and everything else that goes with it. But a year ago, he was 15 pounds lighter. He was not nearly as strong. He knew he had to get bigger and stronger to be able to run through some contact. And he ran through an All-American and a couple other guys who are going to play in the NFL in a couple of years.
Yeah, Abdul Carter was one of them, by the way.
Well, that's what I mean. The All-American. Yeah.
Yes.
First round draft pick.
Yeah. And according to, the people that watched that game last night, potential number 1 overall pick, we'll see. But I mean, look, that kid can play. But it was a very impressive run by Jeremiah Love. There's no doubt about it. And you're right, Jesse. Look, Mike Denbrock deserves all the flowers for what he was able to do in the second half and just completely kind of throwing out the game plan in the first half and adjusting to what he was seeing in the first half, in the second half. And, not just trying to run right at Penn State because that wasn't working. And they had a more athletic line now that certain guys were out. Now certain guys are in. And so, hey, we're going to pull them. We're going to move them. We're going to change we're going to mess with their eye discipline, at the linebacker level. And we're going to make Abdul Carter have to work off blocks, and we're going to run right at him. And then they ran away from him and they ran at him. And then, they started messing with him a little bit more and didn't take him out of the game because that's not possible.
Right.
But they limited his impact in the game and what he had in the first half.
See, I would have liked, I can't remember if I texted one of you guys before the game, but I was in Notre Dame. I just would have kept wham blocking him all first half. I would have just kept, you got a bad shoulder, I'm sending my 300-pound lineman at you
Who came down on top of him on that play?
Oh, that was Jagasaw.
Was it Jagasaw?
Oh,
you can't tell me that wasn't intentional.
Oh,
he was a little bit late getting there.
Well, there was
not only was he late,
Wagner threw him down and landed on him, and then Jagasaw came on top.
Not only was he late, he literally put his foot in the ground because he was going one direction and then came back in this direction and then went. Look, I don't condone dirty play, but echo the whistle and all. Like, Jagasaw's a player, man. Like, and that's what I want from my offensive lineman, because there's another guy that wore 56 that would have done that exact same thing at Notre Dame. I'm just going to leave that right there.
Are we talking about Howard Cross, or are we talking about somebody else?
We are talking about
Quentin Nelson. Sorry.
Yeah. He did the exact same
thing.
I
went through the 56 Rolodex real quick. He didn't jump out right away. So Jesse came in. You did everything but bring the whiteboard, Jesse, with all that stuff. I felt like, like we talk about adjustments on the other side, like they were doing a really poor job. You were talking about how some of the things that Penn State was doing offensively, Notre Dame did a really poor job setting the edge defensively in the first half, and that really changed in the second half. And who was part of that was Jalen Sneed. Like there was that big third down play where Allen was trying to get around to the left, and Sneed was just holding up there on the edge, keeping him inside, and just big gang tackles, and they just did a much better job of containing that and controlling that in the second half, I thought.
Yeah, and again, if we're going to talk about dirty play, there was some dirty play going on the other direction as well, with a little bit of.
I'm going to say, Riley Leonard, man, it's like.
Yeah.
Vince, do you know who did that in high school? I'm curious if you the teams we would play in high school, who was
St. Joe?
Marion used to grab Shaq under the pile like crazy. Crazy.
Yep.
Catholic boys. Come on, man.
Just saying, you got to find those, you can find whatever you can get.
All right, here's a quick Christian Gray talking on the field about his interception, the big interception that set up the game-winning field goal.
See on that play, what was going through you in that moment?
Just catch the ball. Just catch the ball. That was going through my mind, and I knew I was going to make the play.
Not an easy play by any means either. Is that the play of the game?
Has to be.
The interception?
One in the game.
The interception, yeah. Like, what are your nominees? Do you have any other nominees?
Yeah, the Great House touchdown. The Great House touchdown was
Great House
massive.
Touchdown, the Jeremiah Love touchdown. I'm actually saving the love for another category in rapid fire.
That's fair.
Later, but
yeah, I mean, look, we have complained about wide receiver release moves off the line of scrimmage and press coverage for what feels like ever since I've started doing this. Okay, so for 20 years, I feel like we've been complaining about wide receiver moves off the line. That move that Jaden Greathouse put on that kid from Penn State, like, he didn't just trip over the grass. Like, he fell down because he got his ankles broken by the move that Greathouse put on him.
Well, and then the move on the second dude.
And then he did it to the next guy too. He literally put two guys on their butts without touching them. Okay, so that's a pretty big moment right there when everybody was talking about Drew Aller. Well, Riley Leonard just threw for a 54-yard touchdown, and a lot of that was because of what Greathouse did. But and I will say this, yes, he was wide open, and we've talked about how some of those are the hardest passes to throw when a kid is wide open. He got it to him in stride, but in the past, that ball isn't even thrown to a guy that's wide open because he doesn't get to it. In the past,
you're saying the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not
he doesn't even
quarterback, but other quarterbacks.
Other quarterbacks don't even see that as a possibility. And the play doesn't get made. So, I will give Riley Leonard all the credit in the world for at least doing that in that moment. And look, he completed balls down the field. Aeneas Williams, Greathouse, like, he completed balls when he needed to. And frankly, had a much better day than Drew Aller did, even with the 2 picks, because Aller threw 3.
So I got 2 things based off of everything that was just said there. One, the chat brought up an honorable mention. I think this play was huge. That sack fumble on Angeli. I don't know how Notre Dame recovered it because Penn State fell on that ball first.
And I don't know how many times I backed it up. Like, the ball just disappeared. One of the offensive linemen came up with it, but nobody actually stood up with the ball. I couldn't tell. like, was it Jackasaw? Like, who exactly?
I think it was Shroud that got on
It was
it.
Shroud.
Was it Shroud?
He like put his long arms like under the Penn State player.
It's just called
like,
grit.
Just yanked it out. I mean, that's basically what he did. From
I
what
know.
I remember.
That sums up the whole game, in my opinion.
It looked like the game, not the game. It looked like, that drive was over. It's like, oh, brother, another sack for Angeli, and now he fumbles, but they were very fortunate to be able to get that back. You're absolutely right.
And then second point I would have, I don't know if you guys listened to this. I need to find the Notre Dame post game audio because I haven't found it anywhere. But the only audio I saw was Drew Aller crying in the post game press conference, basically. Well, they cut away before he actually started crying. But
I saw the whole press conference. He didn't cry.
He didn't cry. His whole face was getting beat red. But anyways.
That's what I'm talking about the play, he
said he was trying to dirt it. There's no way he was trying to dirt that ball.
No,
well, he might have been trying to, but
because one thing we got to give some props to Jalen Sneed for the pressure on that play, because Sneed with the pressure in his face is what made that play. Excellent interception and a play on the ball by Christian Gray. That had to happen, but Sneed is the one who forced that. If he's not there bearing down on him, that Aller doesn't make that throw when he does and how he throws it. But late over the middle.
You're not trying to dirt a ball over the middle.
No, he's trying to make a play. He's trying to make a play. Let's be honest. He's trying to make a play. You can say whatever you want, revisionist history and all that. But what I saw was everything he said up to that point was accurate. He went through his first two reads on the left. They were covered. He went to the backside, was also covered. But he tried to squeeze the ball in there, and it didn't happen. And it
tried to complete his first pass to a wide receiver all day, and I guess that's what you get.
He completed more passes to Jack Kaiser than he did to a wide receiver last night. So
and Christian Gray.
I'm so pissed because Kaiser made such a great play on that ball as a linebacker.
I don't think I've ever seen him make a play like that before.
I mean, that was amazing. It was even leading up to the pick, like the pick itself. Full extension, pulling it out of the air.
All hands.
But to get to that point as a linebacker, to get back there and get to where he needed to be, because he kind of got beat on a play earlier just like that. And he just turned, put his head down, and was just sprinting to that spot and made that play, which had not have been overturned by a penalty at all.
That was the one moment in the game I was mad at Greg McElroy when he was like, "Well, by the letter of the law, you got to call that."
No, you don't.
That was the only point. Well, there were more
again though. I thought McElroy was on point last night. I thought it was a really good job of being a game analyst, and not like just giving you a bunch of opinion on this. Like he was really good situationally. Like, here's what you should expect, here's what they're thinking as the quarterback, I thought he did a really good job.
I didn't listen that closely, so I'm not going to comment.
That's funny because you usually listen a lot more.
I do, but I
was outraged at that point. There was no listening.
Well, that's fair. But I watch the game by myself. Usually I watch the game by myself, but I made the decision to go to a friend's house.
Oh, that's right.
You went to someone else's house last night?
I did, yeah.
I sat up in my attic by myself, doors closed, and the fiance went to dinner with a friend last night, and she told me, she said, that someone asked for the game to be turned on at the bar, so they turned the game on, and as soon as they turned the game on is when Riley Leonard went down with his injury, and I looked at my friend and I said, I can't go home yet because Jesse's going to be a madman. And so she comes home at the start of the fourth quarter and she opens the door and she's like, honey, what's going on? Are you okay in here? I was like, look at the score. What do you mean? She's like, last I saw, Riley Leonard was in concussion protocol. I was like, that was 2 quarters ago. We're back on top.
Back, baby. We're back. Yeah, the no call holding on Gray. Like, if you're going to call all this other,
you had the whole shoulder pad.
You're out there on. Yeah, I know. You're out there on the perimeter. He's being yanked up here by the collar.
Right.
Like, those get called. Like, there's no way. There's at least 2 officials within like 8 yards of that play. There's no way that can't get called. That was just ridiculous.
That was one of the most blatant non-calls of the night, and that includes the defensive pass interference and all of that. that was the most blatant non-call of the night that went against Notre Dame because it was right at the point of attack. It wasn't like it was midline on a guard and a defensive tackle, where that kind of stuff happens all the time. It was at the point of attack where that play doesn't happen if he doesn't get around Christian Gray. Like, the whole reason that play worked is because he was getting his collar completely yanked off. Like,
well, not only that,
so
but
bad.
from 1st and 20 to 1st and goal at like the 3-yard line. Like,
right.
That's a huge difference considering
massive
what Notre Dame's defense does down in the red zone.
Yeah, massive.
Also, James Franklin, pequeño stones for kicking that first field goal and not going for it. I knew that would come back to bite him. There was no reason. The way Notre Dame's offense was going, worst case scenario, you're at the 1-yard line and Notre Dame has to go 99 yards. I can't believe he kicked that. I mean, I can because he's James Franklin, but there's no reason he should have kicked that first field goal. Absolutely zero.
Quite a juxtaposition, really, or like the difference in his thoughts, his aggressiveness, like whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I've got like my eye is like keep rubbing my eye, but kicking that field goal there, and then with 33 or 43 seconds left, you decide in a tie game, give him credit. He thought he was going to push the ball downfield, even though, as we've said, they didn't complete a pass to a wide receiver. But you kick the field goal at the end of the first half rather than go for it. And then at the end of the game, in a tie game, when you could potentially just play for overtime, you decide to push the ball downfield, which I'm not, I don't completely disagree with, but it's just like two like polar opposite, like what his intentions were from one time to the next.
I think at the end of the game, I'll start there. At the end of the game, I think he felt like momentum was not on his side, and going to overtime, maybe he felt like that wasn't going to be great for them. That's the only thing I can think of. And look, we were told. Now, one thing I did hear McElroy say is that Drew Aller has all the tools to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. After he watched that entire game, he still said that.
Of course, these are the kind of things that stick with Vince.
100%.
None of the actual analysis, but he said something good about the guy on the other team.
Not something good, something absolutely nonsensical. After watching that game, which NFL team is like, that's our guy? Seriously.
You'd be amazed. You realize the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Giants and the Oakland Raiders and the Dallas Cowboys exist, right? Like, that's
go to the Chicago Bears. So there you go.
Well, there you go.
But like the mantra going into that game was Drew Aller's going to turn heads for NFL, and the NFL is going to be keeping close tabs on this game. They're going to be watching him, for what he can do. And He had a horrible game, and he still says that. Like, come on, man. Like, that's anyway.
But he can throw the ball to one person.
Bottom line, I would have kicked the field goal as well, because at that time in the game, it was a defensive struggle. Neither team was really moving the ball that well. Now, Penn State was dominant.
Points.
I would have taken the points. I think points were at an absolute premium at that moment.
I would have gone for it.
I would have kept running the ball
with the idea that I might have a good chance of getting a safety, if I don't get it, because you've got them pinned where they are, just the way the lines of scrimmage were working at that point.
I want, if he doesn't get it there, and let's say Notre Dame has a drive like they did coming out of the first half or coming out of halftime, then you're a bozo for not taking the points. I think whenever you have a chance, you take points. It was 0-0.
No, I get it. I get it. That's your mentality, but that's not the way, let's save it, because this is, Jesse's not going to be here for rapid fire, but you and I can dig back into this in rapid fire. Jesse, before you leave, I do want to ask you, because we're going to talk about heroes of the game. There's a pretty long list of, like heroes and sub-heroes and everything else, I think, in this game. So, Jesse, you've got to name the hero at the top of your list. I don't want you to run through half the roster and tell me, well, this guy could be, and this guy could be, and, who's at the top of your list, hero of the night last night?
It's either there's one or two people. That's the best I can do. It's either Jaden Greathouse or Charles Jagisaw, and I think I have to go with Charles Jagisaw because just
Not
stepping up.
you saw.
Just stepping up in that moment, and after literally not playing the entire season, and it's still. I mean, he doesn't even have a season last year to fall back. This is his true first game starting, and it's in this critical of a situation. And then what I talked about in the second half, where they were actually started pulling him and other linemen and actually started moving the ball in the run game. I think it has to be Charles Jagisaw, but also Greathouse because of the he had all the receptions. I think you go with Jeter as well at some point because of the
Here we go. Here we go.
List off the roster.
We're into the list. Who's number 4?
I just don't know how you can pick one person in this situation. But it's got to be Jagisaw because he stepped up to the moment. And if he has a bad game, that whole thing, collapses. That defensive line is so good. I think everything gets blown up between run plays, pass plays. With Charles Jagisaw, they were actually able to move the ball downfield. So I have to go Jagisaw.
Here's the list that I put together of guys you could put on this list.
No, only one person.
No, I'm just this is not I'm just telling you here here's some potential the list is long of options is what I'm saying. Mitch Jeter, Jaden Greathouse, Leonard to an extent, Christian Gray, of course, Steve Angeli, Tosh Baker, Charles Jagisaw, Howard Cross, playing with the injury all night long, coming on and off the field. Gabe Rubio, Aeneas Williams, I think, is someone who qualifies as well. Is there anyone that you guys can think of that you could make a case for that's not on that list?
He just named off everybody. I gave Aeneas Williams my game ball last
I'm
night.
not saying these are all the hero of the game. I'm just saying there's a case.
I gave Aeneas Williams my game ball last night because I think what he was able to do was game changing to put him in that position for the first time all season. And it's the friggin' semifinals, and he delivered on everything that you asked him to do. That's why he got my game ball. So I think he's kind of an unsung hero in this whole thing.
I will tell you this, Jesse. I was thinking, Jagisaw obviously makes sense, but I think that there's a really good case for Tosh Baker as well, because this is a guy who's been here for 6 years now and who played 64 snaps over the course of the entire season. And Anthony Knapp goes down. And by the way, when they showed that shot of Anthony Knapp on the sideline, he looked like someone killed his dog, man. I realized
street clothes.
Yeah, I realize it's the the semifinal, and you
look like John Wick.
Yeah, it's but Tosh Baker goes in. Did he make a couple mistakes? Yeah, he made a couple of mistakes, but again, thrust into that situation, not much different from Jagisaw really in terms of the actual playing time that Tosh Baker had over the course of the season, and ended up playing a pretty good second half of football as basically the third string left tackle out there in a national semifinal game.
Yeah. Agreed. Love it.
Then obviously Jeter.
Jeter's money now. I'm no longer
1 for 5 between November 9th and the end of the regular season. And then all of a sudden he's 7 of 8 and he's just booting 40-yard field goals and clutch field goals.
You just got to get that special dad massage in.
I'll tell you this though. When he was lining up to kick that, I made the mistake, because I always, I've got the live stats. Do you watch the live stats, Vince, when you're watching the game?
I always put my monitor down because it tells
I do
you
too,
what happened.
but I have my monitor too far up, and anytime somebody scored, this black thing would pop up at the top of the screen, and it flashed black. And I'm like, he's going to do it before he even fixed it. But then the way that thing took off to the right, I felt like, I still, even though I knew he was going to make it, it's like, is this thing going to miss? What's going on here? But then it hooks back in.
The grace of God blew that bad boy back to the left.
Oh my goodness.
It was great. I made the mistake early on of having my phone out in front of me, and I'm getting texts from Brian with exclamation points. I'm like, dang it. Hey guys, something good's going to happen right here. I just got 12 exclamation points from Brian. So I turned my phone upside down. I didn't have my laptop at all. So I was not following live stats specifically last night, but usually when it's an away game and I'm watching from home, I've got the live stats up. I have to put my monitor, like my laptop, I've got to put the top down because there's like a 10-second delay. Like it is massive, especially when you're watching it. Like if your TV is like internet, like internet TV, it's even more delayed than it would be if you were watching it like on NBC or ABC or whatever. So I can't do it, man, because I just can't know like that. Can't know.
Final couple thoughts. Vince, agree with you. Aeneas Williams really picked up the slack last night. And when we did our show on Tuesday, I kind of alluded to, I thought it was going to be more so Price, but I thought Aeneas Williams would have to bring it a little bit more. I thought he exceeded expectations. And last night I went good old do not disturb mode on the phone. Didn't post one tweet. I didn't get on Twitter the entire game.
You were locked in.
I was in my attic locked. I didn't even check my phone. Because when stuff was going on in the first half, I wouldn't even check my phone because I was like, I know people are blowing me up being mean things right now. So I was like, I'm not even going to waste my time looking at this. So
correct.
Best experience I had all year. Do not disturb. No Twitter. I went through all the emotions last night.
It's fair because we all, I think, went through all the emotions. I had my my heart rate on my Apple Watch at one point, and towards the end of the game when it was, they got the interception, about to kick the field goal, 178. I think I almost died.
Ooh, it was probably like, hey, you want to start a workout because you're going into cardiac arrest right now.
Correct. And I was watching the game, and I was watching it with a fireman who's like an EMT, and I'm like, I'm going to stand over here by you because there's a good chance I may hit the ground at some point. I'm going to need you to bring me back to life so I can celebrate this win. So
I thought at one point, I'm not kidding you either, after they made that field goal, because of all the yelling I did basically between the Kaiser pass or the non-Kaiser interception and the end of the game, there was a second there after they made the field goal and I was walking, I thought I was going to pass out. I was like, I might faint here because of just like no blood or oxygen going to the head.
Yep. I'm with you. It was a roller coaster.
Well, friends, everyone's sick in this household, so I got to go pick up hot soup and more medicine.
Okay.
You do you, buddy.
You guys right off into the sunset.
Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, we got an hour out of it, right?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I'm impressed that you stuck around as long as you did.
Yeah, well,
considering how it started.
How it started, how it's going.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Jess.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you later. And there he goes into the sunset.
Off the wild blue yonder.
He rebounded. Before the show started, he was getting a little moody.
It's a little grumpy.
Yeah.
And it kind of turned on a dime. I was like, oh.
Did.
Okay. Didn't realize that's where we were.
I know.
I don't know if that's normal for him or not.
All right.
Woo!
All right. So Marcus Freeman on Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt after the game last night. Again, like sitting there watching, SVP starts teasing I'm going to have Marcus Freeman on, so they're kind of going back and forth, doing their little chat. And then SVP asked Freeman about Steve Angeli.
Down 10-0. Penn State's just gone on a length of the field bully ball drive, right? They're punishing you at the line of scrimmage. You're down double digits. Riley Leonard's in the blue tent. Enter Steve Angeli. You end up winning by 3, but you're smiling, and I don't blame you. But what that young man provided in a moment when you all had to have something, how do you measure what that young man gave you in a moment when you needed something?
Peanut butter and jelly time, man. He's special, man. Oh yeah. In a world, in a situation, in college football right now, with so many guys transferring, you know what? He's a guy that put team first, and that's what I love about Steve more than anything is, he continues to put this place in front of himself. Nobody would have batted an eye and blamed him for going into the transfer portal, but he's put this team in front of himself, and he's earned the trust of his coaches and his teammates through his actions in practice and in the situations he had in the game. And so we had 100% trust in him when we put him in the game to throw the ball. And we knew he was going to execute because he's done it in practice. He's built that trust in practice. And so that was a huge drive for us to get 3 points with your backup quarterback and some backup O-lineman. That was one that I hope is not overlooked. But he is a special player, and he had a huge impact on the outcome of this game.
All right, peanut butter and jelly time. Marcus Freeman on Steve Angeli with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN last night. The unfortunate thing, Vince, is we can't just have like normal conversation. We can't just talk about, hey, great. Steve Angeli came in, he made some plays, he got him some points. It has to turn into just like the thing on Twitter, with the guy responding to me, he wants to start talking about, well, Steve Angeli's got a better pass efficiency rating than Riley Leonard. And, it's like he should, and it turns into the whole, he should be the starter. He should have been the starter all along. Can't we just appreciate the fact that the backup quarterback came in, didn't miss a beat, and did lead them to their first points of the night? Can't we just appreciate that instead of trying to get into this, overarching macro conversation about Steve Angeli's career and, where someone thinks he should or shouldn't be?
This is the problem with this whole conversation, right? Like, I want to praise Steve Angeli for what he did last night. Like, that's where I'm at. Like, he etched his name into Notre Dame in the Notre Dame history books because he went down, he got the first points of the game for Notre Dame. Wasn't the prettiest thing in the world with the 2 sacks and the fumble and all that, but he was unflinching. Like, he was confident that he was going to do what he needed to do. He did his job and he did it in a great manner, right? And that's it. Like, that's where the analysis needs to stop when talking about Steve Angeli right now. And it's like I'm being forced to talk about Steve Angeli as a whole player and his future at Notre Dame and whether he should be the starter and all these different things. Like, can we just focus on that game? Because I want to be so positive about Steve Angeli, and you're forcing me to say negative things.
Can we do this on January 22nd or 23rd or, whatever, like after the national championship game? They're going to play for a national championship. Do we have to do this right now?
It really upsets me that we can't be super positive about what Steve did last night. And it's like they're forcing us to say negative things because they, he should have been starting the whole season. And and I don't want to go there. Like, the whole night last night on the post-game show for 3-4 hours, whatever it was, like, I'm trying to be as positive as possible about the whole thing. I don't want to go into my analysis of what would have happened if Steve Angeli was the quarterback for the rest of the game, because people aren't going to want to hear it.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can say it right now. What he did was great in the moment that he did it because of the way the defense was playing Notre Dame in that moment, but he did what he needed to do.
And I mean, let's be honest. We talked about the fumble or, like the strip sack. Like, if Schrouth doesn't, get in there and wrestle that ball away, we're having
we get no points there.
Different conversation.
No points.
Yeah, that's right.
No points. So, yeah, it's just, I just want to be positive about this kid. Like, let us all have our moment to be positive about Steve Angeli, because he did exactly what he was supposed to do in that game last night, and he was a player in this game that helped them win.
Spur of the moment too. Like coming in cold off the bench.
Yeah, man.
He hadn't thrown a pass since the Army game. What's that? Going on a month and a half ago, something like that. At this point, and he comes in and, again, like, he got him down and he did his job, just like a lot of other guys, just like that heroes list that I ran through. A lot of guys stepped up and did their job. I mean, and it wasn't just like the heroes list. There were just guys across. How about Luke Talich, on that coverage, man? Like,
I mean, that was
somebody up, baby.
That was textbook. Like that. If you want to show like teach film, that's what they always talk. It's teach tape for a clinic. Like, that's how you cover a punt. Like, and that's how you hit a kid. Perfect timing. He didn't interfere. He didn't hit him with his helmet. All of that. It was absolutely perfection, and it was friggin' awesome.
Yeah, good point. I hadn't really thought about this. Penn State doesn't know if Angeli or Leonard's coming out in the second half. So you do probably have to spend at least a little time at halftime going, okay, what quarterback are we going to face? You know, like
absolutely. Because it is different, because if it's Steve Angeli, they're going to pin their ears back and they're coming after him every single play. And I just don't see that working out very well for Notre Dame.
No, I don't either. You know,
and again,
because you did see it pretty quickly. Now, the other side, like the one thing that I would have liked to seen more of is like when they did bring in Jelly in, like they hit a quick screen, like they were doing some of that, like there was a slant that he got. Like I would have liked to seen Riley Leonard in the, in the second half do, and that's something McElroy was talking about, like get it out quicker, like
totally get that
in the pocket trying to work.
They were also playing basically prevent defense at that point. So the underneath stuff, like there was so much green grass to work with.
Right.
Now, I don't disagree with that, especially towards the end of the game when he was talking about Riley Leonard. Like, you need to get the ball out quicker. And it wasn't a Riley Leonard knock. It was a Mike Denbrock knock, actually, because he's like,
that's
they're
what
calling
I'm saying.
stuff down the field. That's not what they need to do right now. I completely agree with that analysis in that moment. The moment that Steve Angeli was in the game, they're playing prevent defense. They don't want to give up anything deep. And then when the field shrunk, when they got into the red zone, and that's when they started lighting up Angeli. You know what I mean? So, like, that was kind of a precursor to what you would have gotten later on in the second half if he's your quarterback. That's what you would have gotten. So, but again, he did exactly what he needed to do. He moved the ball down the field, got him in field goal range. They kicked it for 3 points. Hats off, my man. Thank you for doing that.
Beautiful. That's right. Got him their first points, and like Marcus Freeman likes to talk about that middle 8, last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half. And with that field goal and then getting the touchdown on the opening possession of the second half, they ended up with 10 of their 24 points in that middle 8. And they have essentially, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but they have owned the middle 8 during the college football playoff. Because like you think back to Georgia, Jaden Harrison returns the second half opening kickoff for a touchdown. They got points, at the end of the first half against the Bulldogs as well. And going back to Indiana, so they've, that's been a focus of theirs, and they've really done a good job owning that this season, and specifically during the playoff run. So some more Freeman with Scott Van Pelt last night. This one on Riley Leonard.
I mean, you can't buy stats, you can by heart, and when it matters the most, Riley Leonard is going to put his body on the line for this program, and he does it over and over and over, and he finds a way to make a play when you need it the most. And we have the utmost confidence in him. No matter what happened the first half or what happened the last play, on this play when we need it the most, we know Riley's going to get it done. And so he did it again tonight. I'm just glad he's healthy and able to, I'm glad he's able to come back today, but also he'll be healthy for the next one. And so there's a lot of confidence with him having the ball in his hands in the most crucial moments of the game.
There's an interesting comment there to start. I'm going to play
it was
just the open again.
So the same thing.
I'm going to play the open, and then I'll kind of cut it off after that.
I mean, you can't buy stats. You can buy heart.
I was really hoping he was going to say, you can't buy stats, you can buy heart, and we bought heart.
That's exactly
that's what I thought he was going to say.
And we bought that heart.
Oh, because he
bought
did.
The whole body.
They bought the whole thing.
I thought that was an interesting. You can't buy stats, you can buy heart. I'd never heard it put that way.
No.
Before.
And I think he was kind of going down a line of thinking that he probably didn't want to go down. So he changed it up pretty quickly. But, I mean, he's right. Look, if you're looking for a guy that's going to pile up quarterback stats, it's not who he is. Unless that stat is leading your team to touchdown drives. And we've said it all season. He continues to do it. Riley Leonard finds a way. That's all it is. He finds a way. And he did again.
Yeah, I mean, and look, it's interesting because, it goes back to the whole, he's got to be able to pass better. And, well, last night he did have to be able to pass better because it was a closer game. Again, like if you go back to Georgia and the 90 yards, they didn't need to be throwing the ball that much. So he didn't throw the ball more. Last night, they needed him to, and he threw for 223. So I don't know if that makes people happy or not. He's still not going to have – he's never going to have the highest passer rating. And that's, any quarterback like him, that's generally true. Like there are very few guys, like dual threat guys like that, who are going to have,
Sure.
like the pass rating that sits at the top, because that's not who they are. But can they make plays? Can they make winning plays? Can he score touchdowns?
Right.
Vince, his job is to score. Doesn't matter how he scores.
Doesn't matter to me.
No, it does not.
At the end of the day,
That was my Moneyball reference. Sorry.
That's good stuff. He had a much better passer rating than the guy he was going up against. So, in the grand scheme of things, where you're in a playoff and it's win in advance, he was better than the other guy last night. He was better. He was a better passer. He was a better runner. He was better across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I care about. Just be better than the other guy on the night that you play. That's all I care about. And whoever, if it's Quinn Ewers, if it's Will Howard, if he plays better than one of those guys in 10 days, so be it. I'm cool with it. I don't care what his stat line is, as long as they're putting points on the board and they win the game.
That's it. All right, I got some of these super chats that I want to get. They've been sitting here for a while, and I want to make sure that we get them in. Thank you very much, Matt. Some Christian Gray bus money.
There we go.
He says $29. Okay. Go Irish, and glad Sean was wrong about the playoffs.
Ooh.
Man, he's just throwing me those jabs left and right. He's like going back to that whole when we were talking about chances of playoffs and could Notre Dame get squeezed.
Oh, yeah.
He's just not going to let me forget that.
Again,
I didn't say they weren't going to make it. I was concerned that they might get squeezed because of things that were going on in front of them at the time. This was still early November, I believe.
I remember that conversation.
Love you though, Matt. Love you.
It's all good. Look,
preseason throwing $29 at us.
Yeah, exactly. Preseason, I predicted Notre Dame to win the first 2 games, and then that would be it. They're playing with house money at this point, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are very few people, and you probably count them on one hand, if they don't reside within the Goog, that thought Notre Dame could do what they're doing right now. Right? I mean, we all thought that they were good. They were very talented going into fall camp. They've had an extraordinary amount of injuries, and they're still winning games. I mean, it's okay. Like, only one more. There's only one more to go.
Mm-hmm.
All bets are off at this point.
Jay, thank you, sir. He says, the most gratifying win in my lifetime. I live in the heart of Penn State fandom, central Pennsylvania. There's nothing that pleases me more than shutting those bozos up. Unreal team win. I mean, and that's like, I was thinking last night, it's like, man, are we gonna be swarmed with Penn State trolls in our next show, or are they even going to care? Now you don't have to worry about it because they're not going to show up after this. So it's beautiful. HCMF. What is that? Pecs in a white t-shirt. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Coach Marcus Freeman's pecs in a white t-shirt.
Yeah. I'm pumped and ready to kick some you-know-what on the 20th. And head coach Marcus Freeman, we trust. Thank you, IB, for all you do. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Boom.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loop with a super chat. Just saw Urban Meyer interview with Colin today. Some of his Notre Dame comments, and you can tell he regrets not taking the Notre Dame job when he had the chance.
I think things worked out okay for Urban Meyer, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, there's always going to be regrets, I suppose. I don't know that Notre Dame was ready to be a winner back then. Maybe they could have been, maybe they would have been, with him at the helm. But I think he made the right moves for Urban Meyer. At the time.
He won championships at 2 freaking schools, Florida and Ohio State. And, if he does regret it as he's getting older now, I think that regret would probably I would think it probably has more to do with ego than anything.
Yeah.
Like he could have been the one to come to Notre Dame and get this because he did listen, like he had been here for one thing. So, like he
he understands it.
He knew what the place was about. And it was a lot different back then, just in terms of like think of what the campus and the stadium and just everything else looked like back then. Cause we're talking about 24 years ago that he was here compared to now. And, when he had the opportunity that was after the 2004 season when Tyrone Willingham got fired. And obviously they ended up hiring Charlie Weiss instead. But I think for Urban, it has more to do with ego. And even if, like he could have been the one to put Notre Dame back on the map and all these different kind of things. And I do think it still would have been tougher for him back then. At the same time, he's a great coach. And I think that maybe he could have been the one to turn it around. But I also think that just like the last two stops that he was at, he probably would have been here for like 6 years max and would have bounced someplace else. So
revisionist history. I was an Urban Meyer fan at the time. Like I was excited
about
the possibility. Yeah. Don't know that I would say the same thing now. I still think he's a really good coach. He's just gotten himself into a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm. The Duder, thank you. This team is destined to be champions. Mitch Jeter, way to be clutch. The boys are just tough. We didn't even play that good and won. This team is fully prepared to put Notre Dame back where they belong, recover, and dominate, baby. Yeah, I think having this 10 days between games is going to do this team some good, especially like the stuff that we heard that, like there was some flu, but that maybe, the flu stuff was overblown. Who knows? They definitely did not have their A game last night. Hopefully the extra time in between will help them in a lot of different. I just think they definitely, I think that 2 or 3 extra days to not have to jump right into game plan and all that kind of stuff. 7 days in between. I think that they'll be well served by that because they definitely look tired. I thought last night.
Oh, I agree. They definitely. I think we're going to talk about this a little later, so I don't want to jump the gun at all. But yeah, it was just a rough first half. No matter what you blame it on, it was a rough first half. So
true. Joe.pm.17, thank you for the super chat. Going to sit back and enjoy this semi tonight. Also, JS, there is more university of. Oh, is there a more universally likable head coach than Freeman? Guy is legit in so many aspects. I mean, you hear national people talking about this all the time. Obviously, Notre Dame is a very love him or hate him school and program, but Marcus Freeman has swung a lot of people. He's made a lot of haters at least come closer to the middle, I think. He's made him very likable. And a lot of people don't like the fact that he's made Notre Dame more likable.
Yeah, he made Notre Dame cool again, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the easiest way for me to put it. He's cool. He dresses cool. Like he obviously is a big he's a player's coach. They love him. The former players love him. They didn't play for him. He's made Notre Dame a cool entity again, where I think a lot of before he was here, Notre Dame was the wine and cheese crowd. And it was, it was just different. And Marcus Freeman has injected some life back into this program.
Yeah, I just saw the chat comments that people were talking about. Someone said Wagner was slow, and I saw your response. I mean, that is Carter.
He's so fast.
That play where Riley Leonard was trying to get out to his right and Carter was chasing him down. Like we talked about how Penn State was going to find out how deceptively fast is with Leonard getting to the edge. Like we saw the guy who can run with Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
It's Abdul freaking Carter, man.
Yep.
Like that guy was just on his butt. And I thought that he was going to get him there for a second, but Leonard made a nice play, just getting, throwing that ball away. And I think, as you said in the postgame show last night, not making the stupid play and just running out of bounds and eating 4 or 5 yards, I
mean, that was my
we've seen.
That's been my bugaboo at Notre Dame for like the last 10 years. It is just these quarterbacks, they just run out of bounds and take a sack. It's like, what are you doing? Just throw it. Like it seems so simple.
You can throw it. You're out of the pocket.
Just throw it. All it has to do is get to the line of scrimmage before it goes out of bounds. Yes. Like, come on, just throw the ball. And he did that. And it seems so simple, but you would think it is, but it wasn't ever happening at Notre Dame. And that made me so happy. Even though it was just an incompletion, he didn't lose any yards.
Stymie says Saban does seem to have an affinity for Marcus Freeman in this team, as long as they're not playing.
He didn't
Georgia
before.
And Kirby Smart.
Yeah, that's newfound Stymie. I really don't think that was the case last week leading up to the Georgia game.
No, it was not.
So
anything that he was,
and let's be honest,
everything leaned to Kirby.
It wasn't that way leading up to IU either. I don't know who he officially picked or whatever. He was loving him some Curt Cignetti because Curt Cignetti was on his staff. So there hasn't been love for Marcus Freeman from Nick Saban until yesterday.
Tyler, thank you for the super chat. He says, what's the funniest thing you've heard so far or seen on Twitter/X?
Like recently or ever? Because I think those are probably two different answers. I mean, the comedy stuff is, and it doesn't hurt with the way he looks and way he dresses, but what's his name on ESPN? Cam, the quarterback. Why his name is blanking me for right now?
Cam Ward?
No.
Which quarterback?
Who's the quarterback at Auburn? Then he was with the Panthers.
Oh, Cam Newton. Yeah, that ridiculousness.
You want to talk about comedy? Just listen to that clown talk. Holy smoke!
It's obvious Cam Newton can't stand Notre Dame because he will not give any sort of objective analysis.
Man,
yeah.
And I do love watching the Ryan Clark just put him in his place every morning after a Notre Dame game.
That was good stuff last week. That was good stuff.
And he did it again this morning. So love it.
USMA 87 says Trevor delivering receipts.
Ooh, I got to check that out.
His whole day. I don't know if he did one today, but he did one.
I think he was planning on it. Yeah. I should consider wearing hats like Cam Newton. No one looks good in those hats, man. Like, I'm sorry. I
do think he pulls it off. All I think though is he's probably wearing $5,000 on his head.
It's probably true.
It's a lot of money for that hat that no one in real life is ever going to wear anywhere.
Except for on a runway in Paris or something like that. Like that's the only place where I could see that ever happening.
Got a pheasant feather and whatever else sticking out of the side of that thing.
It's something.
All righty, Vince. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Woo! Wow. I thought we kind of eased into rapid fire already.
It did kind of feel like it a little bit, but
let's go.
All right, here we go. So Riley Leonard asked on ESPN on the field last night about Marcus Freeman's halftime message to get him going.
He said, history is written by conquerors. We're holding the pen. We decide how we want to write our history. And, I'm a firm believer in whether you think you can or you can't do something, you're right. We believe that we can do it. And we went out there and did it.
I will say it was much easier to hear on TV. That band was really drowning him out. But the line, in case you couldn't hear it, history is written by the conquerors, and we're holding the pen. Rate that scale of 1 to 10, Vince.
Oh, that's a 27, and I know that it kind of stems from the Manti Te'o speech that he gave in the documentary, but that was way back at week 2. And my point is, yes, it kind of falls in line with what Te'o said. And he handed him the pen, the whole thing.
I kind of remember that, but I don't remember it very specifically. I did watch those episodes, but I don't.
Yeah, he said it was something similar. It was like, you have a chance to write your own history.
Okay.
And then he handed Marcus Freeman the pen, and it wasn't quite that quote. It wasn't quite the, history is written by the conquerors and we have the pen. Like that wasn't right. That wasn't the exact quote, but
I have heard some form of history is, written by the victors, the conquerors, whoever before. Yeah.
But that particular quote in that moment, it's very reminiscent for me. And just to throw like a Notre Dame spin on it, right? You got the win one for the Gipper speech. Like that happened, like the actual event happened weeks before, years before he actually used it in a halftime speech. Like that happened week 2 this year.
Yeah.
And he waited until January 9th to use it,
pull it out
in a halftime speech. Like that is just perfect timing for the moment. And not only that, but the actual quote itself, you might as well just chisel that crap right into the wall of that new building that they're building.
This feels to me,
I'm telling you,
like if they win the whole thing, it's like that Tim Tebow speech.
Exactly right.
You are going to see a hard work. And remember all that? And they built the statue of Tim Tebow, and that was part of the statue of that, that whole speech that Tebow gave about, after they had lost and the turnaround that they were going to make and all this different stuff. And obviously they go on to win a national championship. And that feels like, whether it's out in front of Notre Dame Stadium or over there outside the Goog and the practice facility, wherever it happens to be.
New building, baby, right
they
there.
Win this whole thing like that. That needs to be up there. That needs to be inscribed in stone for the rest of time.
Yes.
History is written by the conquerors, and we're holding the pen.
That just gives you
how can
chills.
you go wrong?
I'm sorry. That's like, I'm not a big fan of like some people just love quotes and like.
I know you're not a speech guy. You're not a speech guy.
I'm not.
But
that is.
I don't know. Like, did your coaches in high school, did you get like quotes and speeches or any of that different kind of stuff?
A little bit. I'll never forget one time the principal came in and he was this big buff guy, and he's trying to motivate everybody and he's talking about the kickoff team. When you kick off, whoever goes down and lays somebody out, I'm going to buy you a pizza. I'm going to buy you a pizza. Like that was his thing. And so we would just make fun of that.
Put it in stone. I'm going to buy you a pizza.
Yeah. We would just make fun of that for years. Like, oh, if you do that, I'll buy you a pizza. You draw that fine line between like a motivational speech and just sounding ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
And that quote for me gave me goosebumps. Like that hit home, and so
it's got to hit the right note. It can't just be stupid cheesy, which I agree with completely.
Yeah, because you've seen them. You've seen the coaches that just get just a little bit too much cheese on the cracker. You know what I mean? And I was never a big speech guy. I would tell everybody what they needed to know. And
we never got speeches when I was in high school. We just had coaches like, "Oh, work harder." Like that was the speech.
Yeah.
Work harder. Be better. It's like might as well be Riley Leonard's mom. It's like, you suck. That's the kind of speech.
I can't believe they rolled that back out yesterday. Oh, and they used her quote when she's wearing a blue blouse. Like that was clearly from last year when they originally, did that whole interview. Like you couldn't even hey, we'd love you to have a quote on that again. Could you wear Notre Dame colors? Like,
right.
That was bad. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh,
well.
It's way out there.
Yeah. Perfect. And like you said, the timing, like saving that for just the right, like he didn't use it, at halftime of Louisville or whenever it happened to be. He saved that, had it in his back pocket.
I just love it.
He's ready to go. When the chips are down, tell the boys,
Yeah, we're going for the Gipper. Like
that's right.
I know that's not an original quote from Marcus Freeman. Like I get it.
Doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
It came out of his mouth.
Right.
And that's the first thing that Riley Leonard talked about when he was asked about it.
Yep.
Which makes it perfect. So Marcus Freeman on the field afterwards asked about how his team managed to overcome and pick up the win.
They're a bunch of savages. They're built different. I told them they're built different. And I'm so proud of them. Just what they've accomplished, the way they've stayed together and find ways to improve, and they play for each other. They're a special group.
These guys are a bunch of savages. Who is your savage of the night, Vince DeDario?
It's Riley Leonard. And I'm sticking with it because Riley Leonard has always been my X factor in all of these games because this team is going to this team is always going to win or lose based on the play of Riley Leonard. And I have yet to see a game where Riley Leonard just goes off and they lose. I have yet to see that. When he plays well, they play well. And he always seems to find a way to win. And I feel like that's a microcosm of this entire team. They find a way to win. When we thought that, there's 48 seconds left and Penn State's got 2 timeouts and they got a chance to run down, go down the field, kick this field goal, win the game. Christian Gray finds a way to win. Mitch Jeter finds a way to win. Riley Leonard rolls out when you think they're just going to run the ball to run the clock. He rolls out to his left and then finds Greathouse for another 8 yards or whatever that play ended up being. They find a way to win. So it's Riley Leonard for me.
I mean, it's hard to argue against it because, I think that, that we've both been, in this camp of, look, I mean, you know what my stance on this whole thing has been all season since whenever it was, stats are for losers, like I'm not going to get wrapped up.
Right.
And obviously I don't think that there's, zero meaning in any stats. I'm just telling you, that's not what you can focus on. You do have to look like at what's beating inside the chest. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to disagree that Riley Leonard was a savage last night and that he's been a savage all season. My savage of last night, though, is Jeremiah Love, essentially for the same reasons. Like the guy came in there and he's been hurt since USC. We know he's been hurt since USC. And, they told him not to be jumping over guys last night. So what's he do? He jumps because he had to. He needed to. He needed to keep the chains moving forward. And, the guy is practically standing straight up and Jeremiah Love just goes straight over him with that knee brace on. And then the touchdown run of 2 yards again, Jesse texted me this morning, the video of it. He's like, I think I've watched this 100 times today. And I was, in the other room this afternoon, rewatching those touchdown, the touchdown drives of the second half. And I must have watched that Jeremiah Love run at least 10 times because I'm like, hold it. How many guys did he break tackles? How did he keep going forward? With Abdul Carter standing right there, the best defensive player on the field, he took him into the end zone and he it's like a total of 5 guys. He broke tackles and and again, he's hit 2 yards deep in the backfield. And he ends up, with that touchdown run. It was amazing. I'm watching Good Morning Football this morning, and Manti Te'o, at the end of the week, Manti is always on, and so he was on with them this morning. And he had his Notre Dame logo on, and Kyle Brandt, who does the angry runs all the time for the NFL, he wouldn't call it an angry run because it was a college play. It wasn't an NFL play. Not part of the brand, but it's a savage run will do, and that's exactly what it was. So
yeah, you're not wrong.
Savage run by Jeremiah Love. He's my savage of the night.
I think the best part about this game, it wasn't 1 or 2 guys that won this game.
No.
Like you said, like we talked about earlier, there is
everybody who was on the field made some kind of savage play.
I mean, there is an exhausted list of guys that made plays that if they don't make those plays, they don't win that game. So
yeah,
it's great.
That's exactly right. I went through the heroes list earlier, and there's a lot of guys who qualified. Speaking of Jeremiah Love, fill in the blank. Love saying after the game last night, quote, "We want to play Ohio State after beating Penn State," is blank.
I don't like it. It's upsetting to me. I don't like it. Why would you give fresh meat to the lion? That's not what you need to do. You at Notre Dame are going to be the underdog regardless of who you play next week. Whoever wins the game tonight, you're going to be the underdog. Just play that roll up, man. I can't stand when fans or players are like, bring on so-and-so. It usually doesn't end well. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's the case here, but why poke the bear in this particular scenario?
Steven says it's bulletin board for Texas. I mean, it's bulletin board material for both teams, obviously, because now both teams know, either way, John says, bring on Ohio State. I do like the confidence. Again, is it smart to say, but probably not out, saying it out loud. It's one thing to say it inside the building, but think about this. In Marcus Freeman's first 2 seasons, he played down to the wire games against Ohio State.
With a fully healthy team
with his alma mater. What if he gets a chance in the national championship game to actually win that game? I I love the mentality that Jeremiah Love,
Sure.
you know, like thinking about it probably in that way, you know, like maybe that salt is still in the wound from last year at Notre Dame Stadium, thinking
Sure
that they
it
should
is.
have won and all that kind of stuff. And after a classic game last night. So I love the mentality. But again, smartest thing to say.
Yeah, I
A
just
bunch of microphones and or cameras in front of you. I don't know about
this is not the same team that played Ohio State last year. And it's, you know, or I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's not the same team. Ohio State's not the same team. Right. Notre Dame had every opportunity to win that game last year, and they didn't. And then Ohio State went and completely revamped their roster and spent $20 million bringing in new guy, or 200, whatever the number is, spent all kinds of money bringing in guys, and from the recruiting trail, because the Smith kid is really freaking good. And, you know, it's two different groups now. It's not the same two groups. And, you know,
well, I get what you're saying. It's not exactly the same, but there are a lot of guys from Notre Dame who have been a part of both of those losses.
Completely agree. I just think this is not the same Ohio State team. They're better than they were last year. That's what and they beat you. They beat you last time with not as good of a team.
There were parts of this season I wasn't sure if they were better than last year.
Agreed.
These two playoff games,
Playoff
they've
games
definitely been better.
And let's see what they do tonight, right? Let's see
Great
how it goes
similarities
tonight.
for both of these teams as well. That a loss propelled them to where they are right now. Different kind of loss, obviously, for Ohio State, losing to a rival and all that stuff. But those two losses have proved to be very big for both Notre Dame and Ohio State.
No doubt. No doubt. And look, it's not going to make a difference in the game either way, just because of what somebody says. But I'd rather he didn't say it. How about that?
Okay. And like I said, I don't completely disagree, but I like the mentality. Which Irish win is bigger, Georgia last week or Penn State last night?
See, I don't know that there's a right answer to this question. And I've been thinking about it since you sent us the rundown. I've been thinking about this particular question the entire time, because I could make a case. Like if this was a speech and debate club, like I could make a case for either side and feel good about it. You know what I mean? Because in Georgia, you slayed the SEC giant, like the SEC champs, the team you couldn't beat, New Year's Six jinx, like all of those things fell by the wayside when you beat Georgia. Okay. Fast forward to Penn State. I think Penn State's a better football team than Georgia was. At least they played like it when Notre Dame played them. And you won it a different way. You were down by double digits. You were down at halftime. You have never had this kind of a deficit the entire season, and you had to come back. You know, how do you respond to a 10-0 deficit? Well, you rattle off 17 in a row. You know what I mean? And then they score, and then you score, and it comes down to a last-second field goal, and you got to get that turnover, and like just all of the different things that happened last night make that game pretty massive too. And you had on the line going to the national championship. So, like I said, I could make a case for either one. I'm fence sitting on this one. I think they're both massive wins.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're going to look at just simple significance, the Penn State win is bigger because it's your first, like, you know, even though this is a 12-team format and you've got more playoff games, this is still Notre Dame's first college football playoff semifinal win, getting them to the national championship game. So that, you know, like just in terms of that, it's significant. But also, they don't get to the semifinal if they don't beat Georgia. And I think because, you know, again, like we're going to talk about James Franklin's track record here in a minute. Penn State's a really good team. And, you know, I will give them credit. They are little bit better than I thought they were. I felt like this would be a fairly hard-fought competitive game. But they were overall a better football team than I thought they would be. Now, how much of that goes to what Notre Dame had just been through, having to beat Georgia the week before, like the way the game ended up playing out last night. From like Notre Dame had to play two really physical games back to back, one against Georgia and one against Penn State. Penn State got a couple of cakewalks against SMU and Boise State, not nearly as physical, you know, so like in terms of bodies and resting and all that different kind of stuff. I think it's Georgia because Georgia is, you know, still just a season removed, 2 seasons, I guess now, from back-to-back national championships. And they are still, you know, one of the standard bearers in the sport because you've still got the same head coach. You do have a lot of those guys intact, and the recruiting is still really good there. So I think it's Georgia for all the significance from ending 3+ decades of drought and the fact of who they are still right now and beating them to get to Penn State.
I'm not going to argue with you because like I said, I could go either direction, and I
wasn't going to
sit
the fence like you, Vince.
I'm a fence sitter on this one. I'm sitting squarely on the fence. I think they're both massive wins. Look, Notre Dame has won more New Year's Six games in the first week of 2025 than they did since 1993.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
In a span of 7 days,
yeah,
they have 2 as opposed to the last 30 years. I mean, so this team's doing some pretty amazing things right now.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Penn State didn't have a wide receiver catch a pass last night.
That's wild. Like that stat was brought up numerous times last night in the show. And that's a testament to what Notre Dame was able to do defensively. And we kind of talked about the fact that their wide receivers didn't necessarily scare us, against Notre Dame's secondary and things like that. But still, I mean, Drew Aller is an NFL prospect. He's supposedly a, franchise QB. You would at least think that he would make them better and get the ball to them and get them involved and whatnot. But there was nobody open, Sean. There was nobody open.
And seems like a few times this week we kind of mentioned that we really now we didn't think that Notre Dame's secondary was just going to blank their wide receivers.
No,
tight ends and running backs got all the catch, but we felt like it was a really good matchup for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's secondary against that receiving corps, and it was a big part of why I felt like this was a game that Notre Dame should win, because I didn't feel like limiting the explosive plays. I didn't feel like the explosive plays were going to come. Now Warren hit some, Singleton hit some. Those are their 2 best playmakers, like we said, going into the game. But the fact that you shut out an entire wide receiving corps is just amazing.
Yeah.
And especially if the quarterback is really anywhere close to as good as he was supposed to be.
100%. And I can't remember a time when that happened, when they got no receptions, 0 receptions. I mean, that's not a great stat if you're a Penn State fan. You can make all the excuses you want, but your wide receivers were a no-show. And your quarterback was a no-show in that regard. And again, we said this going into the game, Sean, if your best offensive player is your tight end, okay. I mean, and they still almost won the game.
Yeah.
But that's not going to win you a ton of games having your tight end as your best offensive player. He's really good, but you know what he didn't do? Score any touchdowns. So they did a good job.
We talked about this earlier in the show, but JWick13 talking about the Aller interception, saying after the game he was trying to throw it into the ground on that interception. That's just, I don't buy it. He makes that throw because of the pressure that Jalen Sneed brought in his face. He had to make a decision quick and get it out. I think you said earlier, you're not trying to throw into the ground in the middle of the field.
No,
that was just a big mistake that he made, and credit Jalen Sneed for making him make that mistake, and credit obviously Christian Gray for making a great play on the interception.
Yep.
So this one was in the Champions Lounge. Again, we touched on this a little bit earlier in the show, but the question is this: second quarter, Penn State settles for the field goal on 4th and goal at the 2. A play after Nick Singleton, the running back, drops a low pass. He was wide open though. Hit him in the hands.
It was wide open.
The pass from Drew Aller on 3rd down. The 4 points ultimately proved to be the difference in the game at the end of the game. All Notre Dame had to do was get a field goal there at the end. So the questions that were posed, number 1, would Marcus Freeman have gone for it? Number 2, was the field goal the right call at that point in the game? Let's start with the field goal and whether or not that was the right call before we talk about whether Marcus Freeman would do it.
I think I'm in the shoes of James Franklin as the Penn State head coach. Okay. I think he made the right call. get the points. You need the points. I have no problem with that call. I was actually surprised to hear so much pushback after the fact, after the game was over, right? Because it was 0-0 at the time. It didn't feel like either offense was really moving the ball that well, and defenses were playing well. Get those points. Points are at a premium. I'm taking the points. I don't really have a problem with the call.
You know what I didn't like? Now, the play was there. Singleton should have, made the play. It should have been a touchdown. But
completely agree.
The way Penn State was running the ball, I'm shocked that they just didn't pound it 2 more times. Because again, like you're down there at the 2-yard line. I'm shocked that they didn't try to just pound it into the end zone a couple of times. The way they were controlling the line of scrimmage and running. So like I have more, probably a bigger issue with, just like the plays that they ran before that. I don't think it was the right. I get your rationale, like you're saying, take the points and all that. But if I'm at the 2, and again, the way I'm running the ball, I'm probably going to get at least a yard and, leave Notre Dame at the 1-yard line if I don't come up with the touchdown. And the way the defense was also playing at that point, I would feel pretty confident that worst case scenario, I'm going to force a punt. And, there's a great probability that I might even get a safety out of the deal and get a couple of points and then get a free kick and get the ball back again after that. So I think you go for it. Inside the 5, that deep, deep in the red zone, I think you go for it. And I think Marcus Freeman goes for it. I'll just go ahead and answer that right now. I think Freeman goes for it on 4th down at the 2. I don't think he settles for points in that case. What do you think?
Completely agree. I think he goes for it. And as the Notre Dame head coach, that's the right call. So it's 2 different scenarios. Like I'm trying to weigh all the scenarios being on both sidelines, right? Now, I've watched more Notre Dame than I've watched Penn State. I have a lot more faith in Notre Dame's defense than I do in Penn State's defense. They're a really good defense.
Sure.
I've got a lot of faith, and it goes along with what Notre Dame has done throughout the season. So, like, the defense is ready. Like, they're ready to roll. They figured Marcus Freeman was going to go for they would be ready, and they would probably deliver. You know what I mean? So, absolutely, as a Notre Dame fan, I would want Marcus Freeman to go for it, and I think he does in that moment because he has a lot of trust in his defense. And so I think he does go for it. I really do.
Stymie says they're at the 2 because they were hit in the backfield and lost a yard or 2 and then dropped a pass. So you're going to get scared because you lost.
Yeah. I think he did get a little bit scared. I do. I think James Franklin did get a little bit scared because he didn't want to, because you're right. Worst case scenario, that's why you've got him pinned on the 2, 3, 4, whatever it is.
Again, if Singleton holds on, it's a moot point. And
correct. No, absolutely.
We might be having a completely different discussion about this game today.
But I do think the chatter about being 1-14 going into this game, that's
got to get into your head.
Can't win without points. I can't win this game without points. I got to get points. You know what I mean? I think that's part of it. I really
that's
do.
Also a very old school, like the difference in, James Franklin patting Marcus Freeman 100%. On the head. Well, okay, Boomer.
Yeah.
How'd that work out? Like you keep your old school thought because me and Dan Campbell over here, we're going to go for 2, we're going to go for touchdowns on 4th down at the 2-yard line.
Right.
It's like, that's big difference in philosophy. And again, like Marcus Freeman talks about his guys being savages and, going back to the Conquerors, write history and all, like, well, it's all part of a mentality that Marcus Freeman has. He continuously shows confidence, and instills confidence in his players that they're going to go out there and make those kind of plays. He's not running away from that kind of stuff. And I absolutely think he goes for it, so.
Agreed.
Okay, last question that we have queued up, unless we get any more in the chat before we wrap things up here in a little bit. Fill in the blank. It's blank that James Franklin is now 1-15 against AP top 5 teams as the head coach at Penn State.
It's very unfortunate for him because Big Game James is not going to be getting rid of that moniker anytime soon. And, a run here, getting in the national championship game really kind of quiets that down. Losing in this game really amps it up. Mm-hmm. And now he gets to sit through an entire offseason with that, that noise, frankly. Look, James Franklin's a good coach. He's not a great coach. He's a good coach. And he is kind of in that category of Brian Kelly for multiple reasons. But one of those reasons is you can't win the big one, and at least not at this level. And so that's a moniker he's going to have to live with until he doesn't. And he'll get opportunities because he plays in the Big Ten. He'll get opportunities moving forward. I don't know what his schedule looks like next year because I didn't look it up, but I'm sure he'll have opportunities. And he'll probably win 10 games again, and he'll probably get into the playoff, and he'll have opportunities, and he'll probably be done this time next year too.
And I also think it's significant that, while he tried to play his little mind games and put Marcus Freeman in a blender, he was essentially putting himself in a blender, with all those comments, because Marcus Freeman is the complete opposite of that. Marcus Freeman has probably coached 20% of the total games that James Franklin has coached in his career. And all Marcus Freeman does is go out and beat, top highly ranked teams.
Right.
Just like what you were talking about a second ago, Notre Dame got double the amount of wins that they had in New Year's Six Bowls or whatever you want to call them now,
right.
That they had in 3+ decades. And he's also got double the amount of wins in the last 2 weeks against AP top 5 teams that James Franklin has. He's 1-15. And Notre Dame also, by winning that game last night, picked up their 4th win this season. James Franklin, Mr. Everybody should be in a conference and everyone should have to play in a conference championship game. Well, Notre Dame runs the conference that Penn State is in as of right now. It's their 4th win against a Big Ten team this season. Notre Dame, with that 4th win, has at least as many wins as 10 Big Ten teams had this season, including USC.
And I believe they have more ranked Big Ten wins than Penn State did.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yep.
So, look, Notre Dame's 6-0 against the Big Ten and the SEC this year. It's not too shabby.
Nope, not at all. 44T wants to know if Notre Dame has released any injury updates. That won't happen until next press conference, and we don't know when the next press conference is at this point. Next week at some point. And it's the way it works is, they don't release any updates until the day of Marcus Freeman's.
And they're not, look, it's the day after. Like those guys are getting checked out. Like they're getting MRIs. They're doing all of the things. They're getting evaluated. There's nothing to release right now. So he always announces, it's the first thing he says when he steps to the mic for his press conference. And depending on how things shake out, and I mean, they're going to try to figure out who they're playing, right? They're not going to have a press conference until he knows who they're playing. The absolute earliest they would have a press conference is tomorrow. I'm guessing it'll be on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the absolute. I don't even think it'll be Sunday.
You don't even think it'll be Sunday?
No, I think Monday is the earliest because the game is not until January 20th.
True.
So like I was thinking it might be even, like if you set it out, like if Saturday, because like the way they've done it, they've timed it out so everything matches up to what like a typical game week would be. So like during the regular season, if the game is on Saturday, the press conference is on Monday. So if the game is on a Monday, the press conference could potentially be like, Wednesday or Thursday.
That's true.
Even.
Yeah, it just depends on when they're going to go down there. Are they going to go down there earlier than they would have in the past because they've got more date? Like they're, I don't know what their plan is. It's very clear that they have been treating these playoff games a lot more like away games as opposed to bowl games. You know what I mean? They're not going down there for 5 days like they have in the past. And they're not doing like the two teams go to a bowling alley together, or they do like a shopping trip with kids. You know what I mean? Like
go out to the,
the pomp and circumstance is not what it is at normal bowl games.
Yeah.
These are business trips, to steal a term from Brian Kelly. They're going down there a couple of days in advance, and they're going to play the football game. Since there isn't another one after this, I'm wondering when they're going to go down this time around.
I just want it noted that I think you've brought him up twice in this show, and I have not said his name once.
So. The one who shall not be named. I'll keep bringing them up because I was in Louisiana when Notre Dame shed the curse.
Scott L. Esquire, question. Do you guys think Estime contributed to the culture of that room to run like Love did to get that ball into the end zone? I mean, there's a great culture in the room. There's a great culture.
The great culture starts with McCullough.
I think it's more just like Jeremiah Love is to use your word, Vince, is just a damn dog. And he was not going to be denied the end zone. He was going to get himself into the end zone, and he made sure of that.
If anything, the culture is created by McCullough. And look, Estime is a great player. There's no doubt about that. But I would put mine at McCullough's feet on this one.
Yep. Joe says Kyron ran like that. True story.
Good point. They just had different styles, but he wasn't afraid of contact. That's for sure.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. All right, man. Well, that was fun getting to talk about that. Getting to talk about a college football playoff semifinal win. Getting to talk about going to the national championship game. It is crazy, man. Like
I'm so excited right now. I can't even. You sure you don't have a backup on next Sunday?
Go earlier.
Is the road a little earlier? Yeah. Somebody you can get to man the ship for a game.
I don't know who that would be.
I don't either. But
got to do what we got to do.
I know. I know.
There's still priorities. Like there are different jobs, but there are still priorities.
Right.
Do what we got to do. Yeah, but we were pricing like we were looking at little van, not little vans, but
that's a big van.
Yeah. I don't know. We've been throwing out this whole RV proposal for a while, and I do remember the last time we talked about RVs, someone said they could hook us up. So if you're really someone who can hook us up, even if it's one of those like van size, smaller things, that's kind of what we're looking at.
I know.
Looking for.
Just
so
saying.
Hook us up.
That's right. That's right. I'm ready. I am so ready. This is going to be one of the longer weeks of the year. But I will
that's
say,
the thing. We've got a full week next week. And then, again, like the game is not until it's basically 10 days away from right now.
Right. Yep.
Would you have watched the other semifinal tonight if Notre Dame hadn't won last night?
Not a chance. Nope.
I think I'm probably in the same boat.
Not a chance.
John says we need a party bus. That would be.
As long as John's driving, let's go.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Salty could fly in and drive us down.
As long as somebody else, I'm not a big fan of driving. So as long as somebody else is driving,
I know.
Good.
Vince is like, I'm really curious to see how this goes with Vince's ADD on this trip. So.
And I'm okay with driving on this trip because we're going to split it up, I would imagine, and things like that. But
no, you're doing most of the driving.
I've driven.
I'm kidding.
I can do it. I just don't like it. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a difference.
But like I was telling you, my idea, like if Jesse ends up coming with us and we've got this oversized van thing, I've got my T-Mobile hotspot in the back. We could even just sit in the back of the van and do a live show for
on the
people.
Road.
Yeah.
I think that's happening. Like
that's automatic for the people, baby.
That's right. That's happening. So
especially since we're going to Atlanta. That's where that whole thing came from. I know you have no point of reference on that. REM album.
Yeah, nope.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here as always. A lot of great questions, a lot of great comments and conversation and super chats and everything else. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you as always. If you hadn't noticed, by the way, if you're a podcast listener, like the actual, just the audio podcast, we are now on the Believe platform.
Yeah.
We appreciate everything that Believe. It's been like a week that we've been with Believe, and everything I've seen so far has been great. So appreciate them. All right. Hit that like button before you leave. And of course, subscribe, rate, and review, and all that kind of great stuff. I believe upon further review, do you think it's tomorrow, Saturday?
It's not going to be tomorrow because he's traveling tomorrow. So
he's traveling tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely not going to be tomorrow. So I would assume sometime on Sunday.
All right. Sounds
but I don't
good.
know. We'll see.
Okay. Have a great weekend. I will be in Clemson, South Carolina, Sunday. Speaking of women's basketball, they won going away. I didn't think the second half was going to end last night, man. It's like so many fouls.
I stopped paying attention when they were up by a bunch.
Like I said out loud at one point, I said, I don't think the officials got the memo. They're not supposed to be calling fouls in the second half. They're just supposed to roll right through this. So it was a pretty resounding win, and they'll be heading to South Carolina next week. All right, that's going to do it. Enjoyed it as always. Thanks to Jesse. Thanks to Vince. Thanks to you, our loyal listeners and viewers, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great weekend. IB Nation Sports Talk.
Boom.